Thank you. Welcome for joining us today. This is our second IR Studio live session. We appreciate you taking the time to be with us. My name is Brian Hukariza, and I'll be the host for this session. And who am I? I'm a support engineer here at Infinite Reality, and I focus on supporting creators building and interested in building spaces and worlds with IR Studio. Today, we'll be talking about building social spaces in IR Studio. What is a social space? Why should I build a social space? What are some examples of great social spaces? These are just some of the questions we'll be covering and more. And who better to cover this topic than today's expert? And joining us again is Nima Zagami, our vice president and product at Infinite Reality. Nima is a technologist through and through with a deep background in virtual reality, augmented reality, as well as applied artificial intelligence. Throughout his career, Nima has helped build consumer tech that enables new experiences and enhances communication and connection everyday life. Nima, welcome back. It's great to have you with us again.
Thanks so much, Brian. I'm really excited to be here and share Infinite Reality Studio with the world.
Awesome. And hey, let's dive right into it. So in your mind, what makes social spaces so important?
Yeah, so ultimately, social spaces, I think, whether it's digital or not, are absolutely critical to how we connect with people. I think one of the most transformative and rewarding aspects of life is connecting with other people. So that's whether you're coming home to see your family during the holidays, whether you're working with a colleague, or you're sharing a lunch with an old friend. Ultimately, the thing we enjoy most isn't just the activity itself, it's the connection that you have with others. Having any activity like having a coffee or watching a game is just like a vehicle that allows you to connect with people that you care about, or sometimes with like a new acquaintance who will enlighten you, share positivity, or like brighten your day, So that's why I think social spaces are pretty critical.
Oh yeah, totally. And also in your mind, how does IR Studio enable creators to build these kinds of spaces and these new opportunities and ways to connect with each other?
Yeah, so ultimately we believe that connecting through the internet is, just as rewarding as connecting with people in real life. Our studio is designed from the ground up to make connecting with others really easy. Every space created in our studio is multiplayer by default, so you don't have to, you know, you don't have to worry about setting up a complicated networking system. It just is multiplayer. So that means when a creator creates a space, it's a social space by default. Every user in every space created with IR Studio can talk to anyone else in the space. They can invite guests to join them. They can chat one-on-one or with a group. Users can voice chat, they can video chat, text chat. They can even screen share or dance with each other. Spaces being social by default enables like novel interactions and adds value to spaces, which definitely leads to an increase in overall user engagement.
So I guess in a similar vein, what are some examples of where a creator would build a social space, and how does that add a level of engagement for that creator? I guess related to that, in a similar vein, like what are the importance that you think build a really good social space, especially while you're doing that within IR Studio?
That's a great question. So I think there's kind of like a bunch of broad categories of social spaces, right? So you can think of them like a game can be a social space. You can create a social hangout that people just jump into and talk to each other. But even something like a store can be a social space, like communities come together to buy things, like think like a grocery store. So there's a lot of different things that can be considered a social space. If we use like the game example, like Minecraft is about like, creating and building, but it's also about just hanging out with your friends in this new world and exploring what the world is. Roblox about like exploring all the wacky things people make in Roblox. Fortnite's about, seeing what the new hot Marvel or Disney or, music artist drop is with your friends. And so you can do all the same stuff in Infinite Reality Studio. You can build worlds that do all those things. As far as like a social hangout goes, it can really be anything. It could be an island in the sky that an influencer makes for all their fans to kind of join together and talk about, the newest, product that they released. Or it could be a Twitch streamer can build like a theater space that, everyone can just join to watch the live stream. together. There's so many different possibilities for what you can build. And of course, if you're a company that's launching a new product, you can have the product launch in a world in Infinite Reality Studio and actually really connect and engage with your fans who come check it out, answer their questions live, and really connect with your community that way.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that's the beautiful thing about IR Studio is the speed in which you're able to create something for, like, let's say your engaged audience, your friends, your family, and then quickly be able to push that out and have them not only just experience it, but interact with each other, in real time. So in that situation, let's say I wanted to build, like, let's say like a cozy space where I did want to get a few of my friends, followers, family, what have you, into a central hangout, which is like maybe around, like something like a video that I wanted to display, either a presentation or even like a movie night, let's say, for example. Would you be able to walk us through how you would go about building a space like that and how you would share that space with your audience afterwards?
Yeah. So ultimately, that's what I'd love to show you today. But really, what you do is you go into IR Studio, you think of whatever you want, and you compose a scene. And once the scene's set up, you just hit the publish button. So really, it's just dragging a bunch of stuff that you want people to experience together and hit publish, and then it's live. Then you send a link to your friends, and they can join you, and that's it. It's the most simple, incredible creation experience ever.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So then going through that, given that, we have so many different types of social activities, one of them being actually shopping, which you had mentioned before. Given that our studio has support for creators who do own a Shopify store, do you have any examples of what a social shopping experience would look like?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, let me jump into the shopping experience, and I might be able to show you a little bit of actually building a space. So yeah, we created this store. We call it Wayboards. Wayboards is a surfboard shop where you can go around and your friends can jump in and you can explore a surf shop together. So we built this space and we're really celebrating some of the best moments in surfing. Some of the best surf spots in surfing. We have this incredible wave that's in the store, something that you wouldn't be able to get in a real life store, of course. But we allow you to go around with your friends, explore all the different boards. Give you some examples over here. So these are all fully interactable, so you can move the models around. You can kind of see what they're all about. You can go into first person, so you can kind of see it all from a like you're really there yourself, and be able to look around, experience the whole thing. And then if you walk up to one of these and then interact with it, like let's say we go up to this one over here, you're able to have your Shopify, you're able to have like Shopify pull up and show you the item, the SKU directly from your Shopify store. So you can switch between the different images. So you'll be able to see the images, read the description of the product. And if you go to add to cart right here, it'll actually add it directly to your cart and pull up a Shopify purchase view directly inside of the experience, which allows customers to buy directly in there. So yeah, I think it's a pretty awesome experience. And then of course, you walk away, boom, you're out, and you get control of the character again, so you can go browse and look at another item if you wanted to. Pretty sleek experience, huh?
Yeah, and I love how straightforward it is. I mean, like once you have this, especially if you have a Shopify store already running, and the API and then the plugin that we have available on our end allows you to just essentially import all the the entries you have in your store and represent your store in an immersive way.
I'm really excited about having just like regular people create a social space for them and their friends, like a private little clubhouse hangout in the virtual world that they invite their friends into, and they just hang out in to, you know, um, watch some home videos or post their vacation photos. Basically, if they took a vacation to Hawaii, took a bunch of photos and videos, create a little world with all of them, and then invite their friends over and show them, be like, oh yeah, check it out. And then we jumped off that waterfall, and then me and my partner went shopping, and all the really cool stuff. That's the kind of stuff I'm really excited about. Is what does being super accessible enable that other platforms have not been able to really enable before?
Hmm. Hmm. I guess in that similar vein, what are in your mind, top three elements that are needed to create a social space to begin with? Like, like one of those elements, the element that you put in was a video, which kind of like puts a central area for everyone to meet. So, what other three elements would you say would be important or, almost ideal in a social space?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's kind of three things that I'd say are critical, right? Number one is you're going to want some sort of furniture for characters to hang out around, whether that's a
Hmm.
couch, whether that's chairs, whether that's a desk. You're going to want something for people to be able to congregate around. That's number one. Number two are assets and things to do. So obviously characters can talk to each other, but you might also want to add a video. You might want to add some interactions, maybe a little game for people to play together. Um, like I think just something to do when you get bored of talking or you just want to talk while doing something. I think that's pretty important. But the most important thing is you have to have some friends. It's not, social spaces don't really work unless you have some friends. So that's the most important thing.
Similar to that, which is a good best practice of having friends. What other best practices and maybe tips do you have in mind when you're building out a social space? Let's say, like for different audience. So let's say for your friends, and then maybe for if you maybe put yourself in the shoes of an influencer of an audience, like, given that those are two different, vastly different targets, how would you think about designing or tips around designing spaces for those type of people?
Yeah, so I'd say I think it's very important to know how you want to lay out the space for the number of people and the type of people who are going to be in it.
Hmm.
So if you envision you're going to have a space for, let's say, 50 people, you have to think to yourself, are we going to have it set up as a theater where everyone's facing the same direction and one person's speaking? Are we going to create a bunch of smaller spaces that people are going to break off into groups and hang out in each of those groups? And then once you have that kind of concept of like, okay, this is how many people I want at the same time, this is how I'm going to, distribute them around the space. Uh, then I think probably at that point, most critical thing is like the specific layout of the space and the distance between things. And the
Hmm.
things that you're going to want to do is basically test the space and the distance between the other parts of the space and other characters by changing the camera to different distances. So try the camera from really zoomed out, see how that looks, see how close things look to each other, see if it looks normal, the distance that the each of the characters are away from each other. Then bring it closer, maybe make it like, make the camera 5 or 10 feet behind the character and see if that looks normal. Then go all the way into first person so that you're looking through their eyes and be like, oh, is the other person way too close to me? Do they look way too far from me? Does that look ridiculous? And try to adjust things so that it looks good in all of those, because your users can be, viewing from all those different camera angles. The other thing is when you're testing out the space from a distance, the camera really far back, you're also going to want to make sure there's not going to be any walls or anything clipping into you. So
Hmm.
if it's a theater, it might be okay, but then you're going to want to either have the theater be backless so that you can always see from the back, or you're going to want the back to be really far back so that, even if someone zoomed all the way out, the camera isn't clipping through the building. So those are the
Hmm.
kinds of things that you're going to want to do. Or alternatively, you can also set up a quad surface, which sounds a little complicated, but ultimately you can make a surface where it's visible from one side and invisible from the other. So you can actually let someone clip through it. And once they clip through it, it'll be invisible. They'll just be able to see all the way through. And so for things like walls or like the back of the theater, that would be ideal. So if your character looked towards the back of the theater, they'd see a wall. But if the camera clipped through it, it would be invisible and they'd be able to see all the way through. So those are kinds of things that I would think through when building a space like that.
Yeah, to touch on that from my perspective as well, there are obviously a lot of best practices that you could pull from in real life. A book that I'd read in the past that I feel like kind of guides me when I'm creating spaces like these is a book called 101 Things I Learned in Architecture School. And they dive into things, everything from exactly what you said, like keeping in mind the scale of things, how things feel within a space, but also the shape of the space, which kind of dictates, the movement of, your visitors, your audience within that space. But in terms of like building out the space and seeing the scale, um, as you can all assume in the audience, um, iteration is going to be very important for getting this right. What looks right in the editor may look differently, vastly differently, when you have your audience and yourself jump into that space, on its own. So iterate often, iterate, test a lot of times, and you know don't be afraid to just start throwing in there and seeing how it fits within the realm of your idea. But also, like, rules are essentially meant to be broken, right? So even like, let's say you're trying to build a realistic space, you could go outside the bounds of what is a realistic scale, and it might make sense in the context of what you're trying to build versus just trying to either keep it realistic or go completely unrealistic. So, don't be afraid to play around. And as we had mentioned, the beautiful thing about IR Studio is you make these changes and you can publish them quickly. And so, I can't speak enough of how, powerful that is, because, you don't have to worry about compile times. You don't have to worry about having to send your audience a build for them to then just experience the space itself. And so, iterate often, iterate a lot, and get people involved as soon as possible. Again, speaking to what Nima had said, get some people to, be part of your development process, your creation process. And, every time you have, a new update or a new version of your space, get them in there. And, what might also, look okay as one person within a space might be completely, might have to be completely changed once you get, 10, 20 people in there. So yeah, don't be afraid to just dive in and start, building out. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, Brian,
Okay.
I think that's great. Just wanted to add to that real quick. I think that you've really hit on the magic there. Other creation platforms, sometimes compiling alone takes anywhere from 3 to 6 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
whereas with Infinite Reality Studio, you can go through 3 iterations in less than 1 minute. You literally make a tweak, hit play, preview it. You don't like it, hit pause, make a tweak, preview it. While you're previewing it, you don't even have to wait and hit pause. You can just make the tweak right there while it's being previewed. And then if you like it, then you just hit publish, and then it's live. And then you invite your friend over or your coworker and you test it. And you can see exactly what it is really, really quickly. It's that speed of iteration is absolutely key to making this one of the best creator platforms ever made. And I think people should really take advantage of that. Take advantage of, to exactly like your point, there's no downside. Just try things. Try things
Mm-hmm.
quickly. In a worst case scenario, you reverse it in 30 seconds. No big deal. I think
Yeah.
that's so empowering to people to know that, like, when I'm trying these things, I'm not going to be stuck for 5 or 10 minutes, and then have to go try it again, which puts me there for another 20 minutes, and then spend 30 minutes, an hour to try something new. You could try everything that you could possibly want in just a couple minutes, and then you already know exactly what you're going to want to build after you try all those things. I think that's beautiful.
Definitely. Definitely. I mean, the time saved, having to walk between your desk and going to get coffee, waiting for something to compile. Oh, you'll save so much, since, the speed of iteration of being able to do that over and over, as you had said, like, it sounds like we can't drive that point home, much further. It's just such a nice thing about the engine, just being able to, again, iterate quickly, but then get people involved and experience your space as quickly and often as possible. All right. Yeah, that's a great session. So let's start diving into some of these attendee questions. And thank you for these great questions. We appreciate you joining us for this today. And so we have a question up here. Looks like it says, "This is good background. I've never created an immersive space before. What are the top elements I should put in my space to make sure it is an appealing social space?" Very good question.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing is just the quality of the assets. So I think it doesn't actually really matter what you want to put in there. I mean, it's different for every space, right? So, if you're a shopping space, you're going to want to ensure that all of the items that are in your space are, have good descriptions, are highlighted well, they have enough room to breathe compared to other things. You don't want to make it too cluttered. If you want to have a purely social space, like I said, you want to make sure there's like furniture, and you want the furniture to look nice. You want the, background that, that the skybox to look nice. You want the world to feel like a comfortable spot for you and your friends to hang out in. Um, yeah, ultimately, I think it really depends on your space, but the quality of the assets, I think, is the most critical. So what you're going to want to do is either use the existing asset library that Infinite Reality has provided, which is exclusively high quality assets, or you're going to want to take the time, either hire an artist or yourself in Blender or another 3D modeling tool to create high quality assets that you can upload into the into IR Studio and use. The quality of the assets, I think, is the most critical thing.
Yeah, and to jump in on that, I also think, determining the size of the space based on who you're targeting is also really important. Again, going back to the conversation of, let's say you're creating a space for just your family or friends versus, you're an influencer with a huge audience. I think the scale of those spaces would be vastly different if you're trying to appeal to all of them. So in my mind, if I'm trying to build a space just for, some people that I know personally, I would probably try and keep that space relatively small, almost intimate, like like maybe the size of a living room or even a garage. Whereas, if you're an influencer and you're trying to have as many of your audience trying to be, to interact with you within a space, anything from like, the size of like a speaking, a hall where you give speeches from, or even like a concert venue. um, you know, Kind of determining that ahead of time will also save you time in, trying to design assets for either a space that isn't intended for the scale that you think you have in mind. So determining that, I think, ahead of time is a really good is key in saving yourself a lot of time, but also kind of helping you be constrained in what you're trying to build in terms of who you're trying to target for your audience. But yeah, thank you for that question. Next question. How do you create something whereby a digital collision transports someone to another scene? So, like, let's say going from a spaceship to a forest scene to a storefront.
So there's a few ways you can do it, but I think that portals are definitely one of the most interesting ones. So there's a few ways you can do it. So we have a couple things called prefabs. What prefabs are these series of entities and components that are already pre-made that do a thing. So they're not just a 3D model, they're not just a component. They're like a complete thing that you bring into your scene and they'll just do a thing. So one of them is a portal. One is our change scene prefab. So basically the change scene just creates an invisible bounding box, and when a character moves through it, it launches into another scene. So you can create as many scenes as you want. These in other game engines could be called levels. In IR Studio, we call them scenes. But basically it will load up a different space for you. Now, if it's hosted somewhere else, like for example, if you want to go from your website, which is called orangedesks.com, and you want to launch into a partner's website, which is called like silverchairs.com, you can also use our like link URL, which will actually go to any other URL. So it doesn't even have to be another completely different hosted world. It could take you to, Wikipedia. It could take you to Google. It could take you to apple.com. It could take you really anywhere. It just opens up an arbitrary URL. There's a few different ways to link to different spaces depending on what you want to do. If you want to link to 2D, you probably want to use the link URL. If you want to link to another scene, you either want to use the portal prefab or the change scene prefab. The portal, the big difference is the portal prefab shows a portal to the scene that you're going to in the real world, so the user sees it. And then the change scene is like invisible. So they just walk through whatever area you set this up and it'll just take them to a new spot. So you can set it up down a hallway, so they'll run down the hallway, and once they hit it, it'll load them into another scene, which takes them to the next hallway. Or you could have it set up so that I don't know, maybe there's like a ball pit that they like jump into, and when they like jump and land in the ball pit, it transports them to another scene, or something like that. There's a lot of different options that you can use, but I'd say those three. So the open URL component, the change scene prefab, or the portal prefab.
Let me put that out as a formal request to anyone creating portals. I would love to see that in ball pit form. Awesome. Thank you for that question. Okay, next question. So with multiple people in a space, is there any sort of identity verification being done to ensure that they're interacting with who they think they are interacting with? and not someone trying to impersonate someone?
Yeah, so in the past, we've done some pretty interesting work on distributed identity, which requires the space creator to care about that. But there are things like, for example, having your account tied to a cryptography wallet, and then basically that crypto wallet will validate, um, who you are. So other people can basically check against that key to ensure that you're not impersonating anyone. But that would require someone who's creating a space who really cares about that. Right now, the what we generally do is we think the social spaces are for anyone, so anyone can join whether they have an account or not. They can join as a guest if they don't have an account. And if they do have an account, they're obviously gonna have to log in with Google. Uh, but we give everyone the ability to report a user. So if you think something's a little off, anyone can just report a user and that flags to the admin of the world, hey, we think there's something off about this person. We think that really protects people and allows people to dig a little deeper to be like, okay, who is this person? But if if you're an enterprise customer who has a need for a space with identity validation, you can work with our enterprise team, and they will be able to, find out something that's right for you, including maybe turning back on a crypto wallet verification system.
Awesome. Thank you for that question. And a very similar question, you kind of touched on a little bit that I'll click on here. What are the options you have of quieting or blocking someone who joins your space without permission? E.g., if someone is harassing you in the space.
Yeah, so we're building out some pretty comprehensive user moderation tools. Your options are going to be blocking the user, which makes you invisible to each other. In some cases, it might even force you guys into different instances. So it'll just fully separate your worlds and experiences. Or you can report the person, and reporting them will end up telling the admin that, hey, this person is not making me feel safe. And the admin will be able to just beam in and see what the person's doing to other people. And if they don't like that, they'll be able to ban the user either by account or by IP address even. So we're building out all these tools right now. And we're really interested to see what are the things that people want us to add as far as user moderation goes.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for that question. Next question. How many friends can I invite to my space?
So there's the complicated answer, and then there's the simple answer. So the simple answer is we're probably going to recommend that each space maxes out at like anywhere between probably like for the open beta that's coming out, like 4 people is what we really think it'll handle perfectly. You can add more, of course, but as you add more, more problems can arise. When we launch 1.0, which we're planning very early 2025, the plan is that you'll be able to have up to 10 people without any issues. Now, we'll be able to go up to 20 to 50, but that does require a hosting plan with us. And then if you want to go more than that, so you want, anywhere in like the hundreds, you're gonna have to talk to the enterprise team because they'll have to really craft the experience to make it make sense. Yeah, by default, it won't be able to do that. So I guess the answer is going to be once we're live in 1.0, you can expect a minimum of 20 people to be able to be in the same space together before it shards off. And of course, as the creator, you can set what that maximum is automatically when you go to publish. It'll say what's the max users per space. That doesn't mean more people can't join. What it means is it'll separate them into rooms. So if you have like 12 people, you could have 12 people in one space, or if you set the maximum to 4, you'll end up with 3 different identical rooms of 4 people each.
Awesome. Thank you for answering that. Thank you for that question. Okay, so it looks like we're getting towards the end of this. So thank you for all these wonderful questions that you've thrown out to us. Additionally, my team, Creator Success, hosts many opportunities for you creators who might need some support or maybe just a nudge in the right direction to build the best version of your space. Alongside that, my team also hosts what we call creator check-in sessions. These are one-on-one sessions where we could chat with us about anything that may be blocking you on your spaces, maybe any feedback you have around IR Studio, or if you just want feedback on the spaces that you're building. So, come register for a 30-minute session with us. I just want to thank everybody again for taking the time to join us and learn more about social spaces and how that works in IR Studio. Nima, thank you for your expertise and just sharing everything, all of your concepts and top of minds. To everyone here, we would all love to see what you all build with our studio. So take care and have a great day.
Cheers, everyone. Thanks for coming.